total treachery. What you are about to witness is the chronicle of a death foretold for our nation's sovereignty and the chilling account of a master plan designed in the shadows to erase Canada from the map as we know it. While corporate news distracts you with trivialities, the Donroe Doctrine is being executed, a policy of imperialist expansion and unprecedented greed that treats our borders as mere imaginary lines and our citizens as obstacles to absolute hegemony in the Western Hemisphere. Today, we reveal the truth the government tries to hide under a mountain of propaganda, the blood spilled on the snow of Minneapolis, the mob-style blackmail of a multi-billion-dollar bridge turned into an economic hostage, and the terrifying complicity of Canadian corporations helping to build what activists call concentration camps on American soil. The map has been redrawn. The New York Post already announced it with an image that should make us all tremble. Canada crossed out and renamed the 51st state. Greenland marked as our land, and the Panama Canal under the total control of Panamaga. This is not a diplomatic transition. It is a violent rupture of the global order, where the strong impose their boot on the neck of the weak. Get ready, because we are about to enter the heart of horror. Welcome to the epicenter of horror, Minneapolis, a city under siege by Operation Metro Surge, where thousands of masked federal agents patrol the streets like a paramilitary occupation force operating with total impunity. Here, the mask of democracy has not only fallen, it has been shattered by bullets. The first martyr of this campaign of terror was Renee, a 37-year-old mother whose only crime was bearing witness. On January 7th, after dropping her child at school, Renee stopped to monitor a raid by federal immigration agents. Her own phone recordings show her smiling face as she told Officer Jonathan Ross, the masked man who would later kill her, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." Seconds later, brutality was unleashed. As she attempted to move her vehicle away from the agents, not toward them as the government lied, Ross fired through the windshield. Renee was executed with a shot to the side of her head. The last thing she heard in her agony, captured on video, was a male voice shouting a misogynistic slur as she died. But the bloodlust did not stop there. On January 24th, the world saw live what can only be described as a modern-day pogrom. Alex Pretti, an intensive care nurse at the Veterans Affairs Hospital, was there to protect his neighbors. Video witnesses are devastating. Pretti was tackled, beaten, and pinned to the pavement by a pack of agents. Despite being restrained, unarmed, and with his arms pinned near his head, agents Jesus Ochoa and Raimundo Gutierrez opened fire. 10 shots in 5 seconds. They riddled him from behind while he lay motionless in the snow. And as the life escaped this young nurse, cameras caught the ultimate inhumanity. A federal agent was seen clapping in victory over his body. What was the official response? A campaign of defamation and lies designed to assassinate their reputations after murdering their bodies. The Trump administration released fake images of a loaded handgun, claiming Pretti was a domestic terrorist planning a massacre, a claim every video witness categorically disproves. They claimed Renee tried to run them over, but physics and recordings prove Officer Ross was never in danger. These are not mistakes. They are extrajudicial executions in the name of an ideology that has decided human life is disposable. These are not just tensions in Minneapolis. This is a bloody witch hunt to silence all dissent as the Donroe Doctrine advances.
If you thought the blood on the streets of Minneapolis was the only weapon being used against us, think again. We are now witnessing what experts and leaders are calling a mob-style shakedown of an entire nation. The target? The Gordie Howe International Bridge, a $4.7 billion lifeline that Canada built with its own sweat and capital, now held hostage by a regime that demands protection money or it will burn the trade corridor to the ground. For years, Canada fronted the money for this massive project because the U.S. wouldn't pay its share. We took the risk, we signed the 2012 crossing agreement, and we expected a partnership. Instead, we got a declaration of war on Truth Social. President Trump is now threatening to block the opening of this vital artery, scheduled for early 2026, unless Canada hands over 50% of the ownership for free. He calls it compensation. We call it grand larceny on a continental scale. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. Why the sudden fury over a bridge the president himself once endorsed as a vital link? Follow the money. Rumors are swirling that this isn't about steel or fairness, but about protecting the private monopoly of the Maroon family and their ambassador bridge, the same family that has spent years suing to stop the Gordie Howe project from ever seeing the light of day. Is the U.S. presidency being used as a collection agency for a private bridge dynasty? And, as if the economic extortion wasn't enough, the rhetoric has descended into the surreal. In a bizarre fever dream tirade, Trump has claimed that if Prime Minister Carney pursues a trade deal with China, Beijing will move to terminate all ice hockey in Canada and permanently eliminate the Stanley Cup. It's an absurd psychological attack designed to humiliate our national spirit, made by a man who can't even call the sport hockey like a real Canadian. But Canada isn't just taking these hits. The elbows are up. In a devastating counterstrike, Ontario and Quebec have wiped American spirits off the shelves, causing 45% of the entire U.S. alcohol export market to vanish overnight. From Kentucky bourbon to California wines, billions in American sales are rotting in warehouses because Canada refuses to be bullied. The stakes couldn't be higher. If this bridge remains closed, 150,000 jobs in the Detroit-Windsor area are on the chopping block. 1,500 Canadian nurses who keep Detroit's hospitals running may be forced to stay home, leaving the American medical system to collapse. This is Al Capone diplomacy in its most dangerous phase, a desperate predatory regime threatening to torch the laundromat of its own neighbor if we don't pay up the $700 billion in trade protection. Canada has a choice: surrender our sovereignty or drop the gloves and fight for our future.
But don't be fooled into thinking this is just a trade dispute or a disagreement over bridge tolls. What we are witnessing is the birth of a new imperial era, the Donroe Doctrine. It is a chilling portmanteau of Donald Trump and the 19th century Monroe Doctrine. But this time, the America First agenda has evolved into a hunger for absolute hemispheric conquest. The blueprint for this takeover wasn't found in a secret vault. It was splashed across the front page of the New York Post, a map that should haunt every Canadian citizen. On that map, our borders are gone. Canada is crossed out and crudely renamed the 51st state. The Gulf of Mexico has been rechristened the Gulf of America. The Panama Canal is now Panamaga, and Greenland, it's simply labeled Our Land. This isn't just rhetoric, it is a promise written in blood. On January 3, 2026, the world watched in shock as U.S. Special Forces struck Venezuela and hauled President Nicolas Maduro away to a U.S. prison. It was the bloody proof that the Donroe Doctrine is real. Trump stood before the world and declared, "American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again." And now, the predatory gaze of the White House has turned north. Trump has repeatedly stated that he wants to annex Canada, dismissing those who think he's joking. To him, the world's longest undefended border is nothing more than an artificially drawn or imaginary line. His top advisors, including Stephen Miller, have made it clear the era of the U.S. propping up the world order is over. We have entered a world governed only by force, where the strong do what they can, and the weak must suffer what they must.
Former UN Ambassador Bob Ray has sounded the alarm with a message that chills the spine. We are next on the menu. Whether it's through economic force to swallow our industries or the ominous threat of seizing our Arctic waters the hard way, the Donroe Doctrine is designed for one thing: the total absorption of Canada into a new American empire. Our very existence as a sovereign nation is being measured by the greed of a regime that no longer recognizes international law, only the law of the jungle.
The threat to our sovereignty isn't just happening on the ground at the Detroit border. Look up. The very skies over Canada are being turned into a geopolitical chessboard where we are being told to pay for our own chains. We are talking about the multi-billion-dollar F-35 fighter jet deal, a project that critics are now calling the ultimate Trojan horse of the 21st century. For years, we were told the F-35 was the future of our defense, but now the terrifying truth has emerged. These jets are designed to keep Canada on a short leash. Because the F-35 is integrated into a global system controlled entirely by the Pentagon, Washington holds the kill switch. If Prime Minister Carney pursues a policy that displeases the White House, the U.S. can theoretically ground our entire Air Force by simply cutting off software updates or withholding proprietary parts. We are paying $27 billion for a fleet that we might not even have the sovereign right to fly in our own defense. And if you think that's an exaggeration, listen to the ultimatum delivered by U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra. In a chilling interview that sent shockwaves through Ottawa, Hoekstra issued what can only be described as a mob boss threat. He warned that if Canada dares to walk away from the F-35, the NORAD agreement, the very foundation of our continental security, will be altered. What does that mean in plain English? Hoekstra was blunt. The United States would buy more jets for itself and fly them into Canadian airspace at their own discretion to fill the gaps. In other words, if we don't buy their planes, they will treat our sovereign territory as a playground for American patrols. It is a buy American or lose your borders mandate that has left Canadian officials reeling. But there is a resistance rising. Prime Minister Carney has ordered a shock review of the entire deal, and the alternative is already on the table: the Swedish-made Saab Gripen. This isn't just about a different plane, it's about a different future. While the F-35 is a maintenance nightmare that is in the shop half the time, the Gripen is an Arctic predator, built for our climate, cheaper to fly, and most importantly, it comes with a promise of sovereign control. Saab has offered a deal that would create 12,600 high-paying Canadian jobs and build a domestic aerospace industry that Washington can't shut down with a button. The choice is now laid bare. Do we accept institutionalized weakness and hand over the keys to our airspace to a volatile neighbor? Or do we take the elbows-up approach, invest in our own people, and tell the world that Canada's sovereignty is not for sale? The battle for our skies is just beginning, and the outcome will determine if Canada remains a nation or becomes a vassal state. But as the bodies pile up in Minneapolis and the bridge to Detroit remains a barred cage, a more insidious betrayal is being revealed. The tools of the Trump terror campaign are not just American-made. They are being forged, funded, and fueled right here on Canadian soil by profiteers who have chosen blood money over human lives. In the industrial heart of Brampton, Ontario, Rochelle Industries has become the epicenter of national outrage. While Canadians march for peace, Rochelle is busy fulfilling a $10 million rush order for 20 bullet and bomb-resistant tactical vehicles destined for ICE. These are not defensive tools. They are the iron fist of Operation Metro Surge, designed to tear through neighborhoods and smash the doors of families just hours away from our border.
Activists from Greenpeace and Lead Now are surrounding their headquarters with a clear message: no Canadian weapons for ICE. But under our current laws, these war machines are flowing south without a single human rights review, thanks to a massive U.S. loophole that treats our neighbor like a benign partner rather than a volatile regime. The pressure is working. Just days ago, BC billionaire Jim Pattison, owner of the Save-On Foods empire, was forced into a humiliating retreat. His company was caught red-handed trying to sell a massive 550,000 square foot warehouse in Ashland, Virginia, to be converted into an ICE detention facility. Only after a nationwide boycott and the fury of thousands of Canadians did Pattison cancel the $50 million deal, claiming he didn't know the ultimate owner was the DHS. But the people aren't buying the excuses. They see the billionaire class hedging their bets with a dictator. And it's not just heavy machinery and real estate. In the digital world, Vancouver's own Hootsuite is under siege. This darling of the tech sector is under fire for a $2.8 million contract providing social media tools to the DHS. While CEO Irina Novoselsky claims their technology isn't used for surveillance, protesters outside their headquarters are shouting a different truth. You are helping to rehabilitate the image of an agency that is executing civilians in broad daylight. Now the fight moves to Parliament Hill. MP Jenny Kwan has introduced Bill C-233, the No More Loopholes Act. Its mission is simple: end the special treatment. If a Canadian company wants to sell a tank, a software suite, or a prison warehouse to the United States, they must undergo the same rigorous human rights checks as if they were selling to any other conflict zone. The corporate collaborators are on notice. The Canadian people refuse to be silent partners in the destruction of democracy. In the words of the resistance, our values do not stop at the border.